I have made my way out of Medellin for the day. This is the resort town of Guatapé. I am taking a tour to experience this place and the surrounding area. There is a lot to see. The biggest part of the experience is the Rock of Guatapé, or La Piedra del Peñol. It is around 700 steps to get to the top. There is also this colorful village and a man-made lake that boasts beautiful blue water. I'm going to do it all. The primary reason people come to Guatapé is for the rock. It dominates the landscape, rising over 200 meters above the surrounding countryside. It makes the list of the largest monoliths in the world and is a major tourist attraction. For those visiting Medellin, it is just about the perfect day trip. It only takes a couple of hours to make the journey by car or by tour bus, which is how I got there. The cool thing about the rock is that getting to the top can be done by climbing a series of steps. No technical expertise required. I have to admit, from here, it looks a little intimidating, but then you have to realize it's about 200 meters to the top, about 700 steps, not even that, just to the surface at the top, but there is a building up there where you can go up even more steps. Viewing the rock from its base, it does seem like quite the challenge. It is, after all, about 650 feet straight up. There is only one way to see if you are up to the task, and that is to hit the steps. It cost me 20,000 Colombian pesos to give it a try. That converts to a little more than $5 US. I was not alone, as dozens, probably hundreds more, attempted the ascent on the day that I was there. A funny thing happened on the way to the top. The steps clicked by quickly, first by the dozens and then by the hundreds. Suddenly, what initially appeared to be a significant undertaking turned out to be much easier than I ever imagined. This is roughly halfway up, over 325 steps. It is actually surprising because it has been relatively easy, and it looks like the rest of the way is going to be a breeze as well. There are markers every 25 steps to let you know how far you've gone, so you don't need to count. This is truly amazing though. The view is unbelievable. I can't believe what it's going to be like from the top. Many people take a short break near this halfway mark to rest for a moment, take in the statue of the Virgin Mary, and prepare themselves for the remainder of the climb. In modern times, the rock was scaled for the first time in 1954. 3 men got to the top after a 5-day excursion from the base. One of those men bought the property from farmers who considered it useless. He installed steps in a natural crack and began charging admission for the chance to climb. His family still collects revenue from all of the people who come to visit every single day. It took 5 days for those first guys to summit. Now it takes 15 or 20 minutes to walk from the bottom. So essentially this is the top, and it really wasn't all that bad coming up. Legs burned a little bit in a couple of spots, and I was out of breath a lot because we're about 7,000 feet, so the exertion on top of that is another thing. Sweating a little bit, but made it to the top no problem. I highly recommend it if you can do it. Including bouncing up to the viewpoint of the tallest building on the rock, there are exactly 708 steps. Those who touch every one of them are rewarded with astounding views of the lake and land which surrounds the geologic feature. Scientists say that this monolith is 65 million years old. It exists because its composition is of quartz, feldspar, and granite, and it was not fractured as much as the ground around it. While weather and the elements wore away everything else for miles, La Piedra stood firm. The top of the rock is over 900 feet long and 300 feet wide. At its highest, it is 7,005 feet above sea level. There are vendors present to provide souvenirs, food, and drinks. Viewers of The Amazing Race, of which I am not one, might recognize this place from an episode that was shown in March of this year. Was that the most difficult thing that I've ever done? No. Is there still a sense of accomplishment when you reach the top? Absolutely. Especially when you remember when you were down at the bottom looking up and there was a bit of an intimidation factor. And the views up here, every bit as good as advertised. This is extremely special. I hung out at the top for about a half hour, checking out what was there and admiring the 360 degrees of uninhibited viewing. Then it was time to put it into reverse and take all those steps back down to where I started. As expected, the descent was much easier than the earlier fight against gravity.
Two things that are great about this. The steps make this so accessible. Obviously, very few people would make it up to the top if it weren't for them. And there are not one, but two sets of steps, one going up, one going down, so you don't have to worry about two-way traffic.
I am not a fan of heights, but at no time on the way up, on the way down, or even at the very top did this excursion bother me. It felt secure the entire way. Arriving back at the bottom, there was a sense of happiness at having taken this tour and seeing one of the top sites outside of Medellin. The best part, though, was that there was plenty more to see and do before heading back to the city. Just a couple of miles away from the Rock is the village of Guatapé. On the tour, we were given plenty of time to explore the town on our own. Our tour guide, Gina, did provide some information before we all headed out in different directions.
It's very safe walking the town. The most important is that you take pictures with their zócalos.
Zócalos are these amazingly colorful and meaningful panels that are at the bottoms of most of the exterior walls in the village. They are essentially pieces of art that have a very good chance of telling a story about the inhabitants or the businesses of the buildings they adorn. The intent today is for them to add to the beauty of the town and provide a reason for more and more people to visit the place.
You are the reason why people in Guatapé make zócalos.
Originally, concrete was added to the bases of the walls in the village as protection from the elements and from animals that could also harm the structures. At some point, people began decorating the panels. The practice caught on, and additional families and shop owners treated their buildings with the artistic touches. That drew attention from outside of the area, and travelers began stopping in to see what had been created. Since that provided an economic boost to the town, leaders decided to incentivize others to participate.
In 2004, the mayor decided to give money to each owner part of the zócalo because they wanted that in all the town people could find zócalos.
That was a good investment, and now Guatapé is one of the most visited villages in Colombia. It's an instance where creativity has generated a certain level of prosperity, and the town now has an established identity.
When you take pictures with their zócalos, they feel very proud.
Guatapé has the reputation of being Colombia's most colorful village. That reputation is well earned. Aside from the famous zócalos, there are architectural elements, statues, and street art all around to enhance the visual appeal.
You will not find a more vibrant town anywhere, and apparently that's mandatory. As I understand it, you either have to have a zócalo or your house has to be painted very bright colors.
That part about the decorative charm being mandated was something that I heard during my tour. In doing research afterwards, I haven't found further evidence of that being the case. Let me know in the comments if there are requirements for zócalos or brightly painted buildings in the village. Regardless, walking the streets of Guatapé is a delight. Every turn reveals a scene as gorgeous and charming as the last. The town is vibrant, right down to the transportation many people use to move about. Many of the moto taxis, which are sometimes called motochivas, are decked out in a multitude of colors. They congregate around the town square, waiting to take riders to various spots all over town. I did not hire one, but as I walked from place to place, hardly a minute passed that I didn't see one of the vehicles on the go. This is the main square in Guatapé. It is a large space that is surrounded by shops and cafes with plenty of trees and places to sit and relax. It looked as though this was a site where residents gathered to socialize and on occasion for performances. To one side of the square was this striking Catholic church. It is Nuestra Señora del Carmen.
The church is the most important place in a town in Colombia. Always when we travel, we look for the main church.
I learned that construction of the church began in 1865, and it was inaugurated a couple of years after that. Apparently, however, the structure wasn't actually completed until deep into the 20th century. It is a magnificent-looking church, and the interior was just as impressive as what was on the outside. It was free to wander in and take a look. Our tour also took us to a replica of another small village. It contained a church and several shops selling souvenirs or serving up food and drink. It was picturesque, but also a little sad.
This is a replica, but the town on which it is based no longer exists. The people, the houses, the businesses, they all went away when the lake was built. Now that space is underneath the water.
This is supposed to resemble what El Peñol looked like before a hydroelectric dam was built to create the reservoir El Peñol Guatapé. All the buildings of the town were destroyed and the residents moved to a new location. El Peñol had been on the banks of the river since the 18th century. Flooding of the valley and the elimination of the old town was complete in 1979. As part of our tour, we went out on the water for about an hour. It's always nice to be out on a boat. It was also interesting to spend time on the surface of the lake that we had seen earlier in the day from the top of the rock. The water level here was extremely low when I visited because of drought conditions being experienced in this part of Colombia. Other tour boats were with us on the reservoir. There were beautiful homes on the shores. Some were occupied by top soccer stars in the country. There was also a now abandoned complex that was once owned by Medellin cartel kingpin Pablo Escobar. It is said that the dam which holds back the water in this lake fills 30% of Colombia's electrical needs. The trip to the reservoir, Guatapé, and the rock was an all-day affair. That being the case, breakfast and lunch were both provided at this roadside restaurant. I thought the food was incredibly good for meals that were being generated for tourists passing through the area on tour buses.
It's quite the spread. It's scrambled eggs with tomatoes and onions inside of that, and a arepa or a corn cake with some cheese, and then some pineapple for a refreshing end.
Everything on that plate was quite tasty. The same was true for what was served for lunch. They were meals consisting of Colombian specialties, and that gave even more value to the entire experience. The restaurant was open air with attractive artwork scattered around. Even better than that were the views of surrounding farmland. I booked this trip through Get Your Guide, and the excursion was handled by Vieja Medellin.
It has been an absolutely remarkable day, from that beautiful town of Guatapé to the cruise on the lake here to the rock, not to mention the rock. That was spectacular. I even had breakfast and lunch, which is highly unusual. It has been phenomenal, and I would highly suggest this because of the value. $35 for everything that I did today, and that includes to and from Medellin on the bus, an hour and a half each way. Incredible value. Thanks for watching Old Alone and Far From Home. I will see you next time.